Hey there, folks. Tim from Secret Fire Books here. Seeing as Christmas is right around the corner and we are deep into that cozy, nostalgic holiday season, I figured I'd make a nice, cozy, nostalgic video for you guys. But before I get into any of that, I do have a couple of quick announcements. Firstly, I wanted to talk about the newest live stream for the Elusive Exclusive Book Society. That is happening this Friday, December 20th at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Pulp Mortem's channel. I know I'm cutting it a little close. Depending on when I upload this video, that's going to be either tomorrow or 2 days from now. But there's no singular book that we're talking about this time around. Me and Nick and Jake are just hanging out and just talking about some random stuff, talking about our year, how it went, discussing our favorite and least favorite books that we covered on the show in our first year of Eves. And we're also opening some packages that we sent each other. We did send each other some books over the past week, and in the spirit of the holidays, we're going to be opening those up live for all of you to see and doing this sort of collaborative book haul. So if you want to see what books we get, and you also just want to hang out and chill and talk about some stuff with us, be sure to check out Pulp Mortem, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday, December 20th. I almost said November again. I've done this take like 5 times. Secondly, I've also been doing a buddy read with Ira from SF Words of Wonder. We have been reading Anne McCaffrey's Dragonflight, and that review should go up either sometime later this week or next week. I don't actually know the details. We haven't hashed any of that out yet. But yeah, I'm excited about that. We're going to be doing a sort of co-op split-screen book review that Ira tends to do for his collabs. So that'll go up on SF Words of Wonder, like I said, either later this week or sometime early next week. If you are not subscribed to SF Words of Wonder, please do so. I will link the channel in the description, so check that out. Give Ira a subscription, and keep your eyes open for that collab book review. But moving on to the reason I'm making this video. Now, recently I watched a video by Joseph Reed's Books. He did a book haul in which he showed off a book that he picked up, and it was, according to him, the first book he ever read by himself as a kid. And he was excited to reread it, see if it held up, and show it to his own kid. And I thought that was really interesting. And I got to thinking, what was the first book that I ever read by myself? And so I kind of pondered that for a while. And I decided that, in all likelihood, it was probably A Light in the Attic by Shel Silverstein. A book of poetry by Shel Silverstein. And so I went looking for it. There is an old bookshelf over there that has a bunch of books from my childhood. I'm not going to show it to you because it is cluttered and super dusty. But I pulled out this copy of A Light in the Attic. As you can see, I did not bother to dust this one off. It is very roughed up. The pages are all dusty and covered in specks. But, oh man, there he is. There's the Mr. Silverstein himself. What a jolly looking fellow. But yeah, I read this book as a kid. In all likelihood, it was the first book that I read by myself. My aunt sent me this for Christmas one year. She sent it to me, and she told my mom, you need to get your kids to read this book because the schools are banning it. So she was concerned that this bit of literature would be lost to time. But I do still have my copy. And yeah, this is just a lovely little collection of poetry by Shel Silverstein with his little whimsical illustrations. There's one of my favorites, Backward Bill, who lives on top of Backward Hill. I could recite some of these from memory. Yeah, it's good stuff. I love this one too. The Me Who with the Exactly What. That's a great illustration. So much good stuff in this book. Okay, so here's a poem that as a kid I really enjoyed, but as an adult I think it has a lot more meaning. This is the poem God's Wheel. And it goes thusly. God says to me with a kind of a smile, hey, how would you like to be God for a while? And steer the world? Okay, says I, I'll give it a try. Where do I set? How much do I get? What time is lunch? When can I quit? Give me back that wheel, says God. I don't think you're quite ready yet. That is hilarious and strangely poignant. So good job, Mr. Silverstein. That had a big influence on me as a young reader. Next, we have an old hardcover of The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. I have never actually read this. I was given this by some lady who used to go to my parents' church, the church I grew up at. She saw me reading a Redwall book one day. It was like, oh, hey, you like books about animals? I was like, yeah. And so the next time we went to church, she showed up with this old hardcover copy of The Wind in the Willows. And it has some awesome full color illustrations. They're actually plates, so they're printed on that glossy paper in full color. They're pretty cool. And I was kind of amazed that this lady would just give me a really nice hardcover edition of this book. But yeah, I think I read maybe a few pages of it when I was a kid, but I never finished it. So yeah, maybe I'll have to add that to the list of books that I'll read in 2025. Cool stuff. Wind in the Willows. This next series of books is something of an obsession that I had as a kid. This is the Spiderwick Chronicles by Tony DiTerlizzi and Holly Black. Spiderwick Chronicles, a little 5-book series for children and young adults. It's all about this group of kids who they move to, I think it's their grandfather's old house, or no, their great uncle. I think that's what it is, their great uncle. And they find a field guide of his that details all of these magical creatures, and they learn about the world of fairies and dragons and trolls and whatnot. And they find out that they can't see these things because they don't believe and they don't know, and they need that belief and that knowledge in order to see the world around them. And that gets them into all kinds of hair-raising adventures. And at the time, I was obsessed with mythology and folklore. Between the ages of 9 and 13, I couldn't get enough of like Greek mythology and Germanic mythology and folklore. I loved learning about, mythological creatures and categorizing them. And that is what this series is all about. And so as you can see, this box set is old and dusty. I have not bothered to take care of it that much. But I think the books are in pretty good shape. Yeah, they are. So there's 5 books in the series. The illustrator, Tony DiTerlizzi, is also the guy who illustrated the Planescape series, the Planescape setting for Dungeons & Dragons. And I remember seeing those Planescape books and adventure modules in the game store as a kid and thinking, oh man, those look like some gnarly illustrations. And they were. And then I would see these Spiderwick books in the bookstore and think, oh, hey, that's the same guy. That's pretty cool. So here is book 1, the field guide. Book 2, the Seeing Stone. Book 3, Lucinda's Secret. Book 4, the Ironwood Tree, which I think that's an awesome cover. That was always my favorite cover from this series. Super cool looking. And lastly, Book 5, The Wrath of Mulgarath. Yeah, good stuff. I don't know how well they hold up, but I remember loving these books as a kid because they indulged my fascination for mythology. And after that series ended, they did a spin-off series called Beyond the Spiderwick Chronicles. I only have one of those books. This is the Nixies Song, book 1 of Beyond the Spiderwick Chronicles. And they did something weird with this series. If I remember correctly, they did this kind of meta narrative where the kids from the first book sold the rights to their life story to the authors, the fictional versions of the authors of the series. And so it's told from the point of view of these 2 other kids who meet the kids from the original series, and they end up being completely different characters. And I really hated that. I hated that the characters were portrayed differently than they were in the original series, because apparently these were who they really were. These were the kind of people they really were, and I didn't like that at all. So I never read the rest of the series. And then we have, this one is just a wreck. Look how dusty this one is. This is my original hardcover of Aragon by Christopher Paolini. This was given to me by a different aunt. I have quite a few aunts who would send me books as a kid. Nice hardcover of Aragon. I have not treated it very well over the years. I mentioned in a previous book haul where I picked up the rest of the Inheritance Cycle that I would try to get around to that at some point, which I might, but who knows. We got 3 R.L. Stine books. We got 2 Goosebumps. Got Calling All Creeps, which, if I remember correctly, is a story about this kid that gets bullied in elementary school, and he comes into contact with, I don't remember if they're like aliens or demons or what they are, but they're these reptilian monsters that can transform into humans. They take the form of elementary school kids for some reason, and they think for whatever reason that our main character is their leader and that he's undercover. And so he gets involved in a plot to use these seeds that are planted in people's food to turn them into these reptoid monsters. And so, if I remember correctly, at the end of the story, the main character basically decides, screw it, I don't like humans anyway. The human race never did anything good for me. I'm just going to embrace the reptilians. And he turns himself into one and turns his whole school into reptilians. He poisons their cookies or something like that and turns them into a bunch of reptile monsters. And that was the ending. Spoilers for a Goosebumps book, I know, sorry. Then we have my favorite Goosebumps book. This was One Day at Horrorland. Now, as a kid, and pretty much to this day, I cannot stand theme parks. I hate roller coasters. I hate being motion sick. And so when I was a kid, the concept of a scary amusement park run by actual monsters was absolutely horrific and very intriguing. So, yeah, this was always my favorite of the Goosebumps books. And as you can see, once again, these books are old and dusty and in disrepair. The other R.L. Stine book was one of his Ghosts of Fear Street series. This is House of a Thousand Screams. And I found out that this is actually not R.L. Stine. It's his series. It's a sort of spin-off of his Fear Street series. It was targeted toward younger audiences. It's the sort of Goosebumps audience. But these were not, or at least this one was not written by R.L. Stine. Apparently, a lot of the later Goosebumps books and most, if not all, of these Ghosts of Fear Street books were written by ghostwriters. And I remember as a kid, I read this and thought, man, this does not read like an R.L. Stine book. The writing style is a lot different. So even then, I could tell the difference. But whoever wrote this book, I seem to remember they did a pretty good job. This was quite a bit of fun. I think, if I remember correctly, it was about again, these kids that move to their deceased great uncle's house, and they find he was a famous stage magician, and they discover that he was actually a real magician the whole time, and that his house is haunted by the spirits who gave him his magical powers. So, yeah, it's goofy, but it's kids horror. Oh man, so this talk about nostalgic. This is Pokemon the movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back. The junior novelization. Oh my gosh. I read a ton of these Pokemon junior novels as a kid. I rented a bunch of them from the library, but this was the only one that I owned. And yeah, Mewtwo Strikes Back was a big deal back in the day. It's the Pokemon movie, man. They didn't do too great of a job of the cover. They just threw a blurry screen grab of Mewtwo on the front and called it a cover. As you can see, it says, bonus, color pics from the movie. Pix is spelled P-I-X because we're cool. And, yeah, here we go. We do indeed have some, oh my gosh, this book's all crinkly. Have some full color photos from the movie. I don't know why that was such a thing. They always included, like, screen grabs and color photos from the movie or the TV show in these junior novels back in the day. But yeah, I appreciated it. I remember this book was very poorly written. Even as a kid, I was like, man, this book kind of sucks. And about the author, it doesn't list it anywhere except in the About the Author page, where it says that this book was written by Tracy West. And it says of the author, Tracy West has been writing books for more than 10 years. When she's not playing the blue version of the Pokemon game, she started with a Squirtle, which is a good choice, by the way. She enjoys reading comic books, watching cartoons, and taking long walks in the woods looking for wild Pokemon. She lives in a small town in New York with her family and pets, which indicates to me that this was either written by a child or this is a ghost or a ghostwriter, a pen name for some other author. And they're just they're building up the narrative that this was someone young and cool writing that Pokemon Junior novel. And speaking of junior novels, as well as things that I was obsessed with as a kid, we have Bionicle, The Mask of Light, the novelization. Now, Lego did something ingenious in the early 2000s where they turned their entire Bionicle line into its own multimedia franchise, its own multimedia IP. And they had comic books, and of course they also had novels and movies. Once again, this is one of those books that flaunts that there are color pictures inside, because this storyline from the Bionicle series did in fact get an animated movie, a CG animated movie that I remember being pretty fun as a kid. But who knows if it actually held up. But yeah, good bit of nostalgic reading. We have another Bionicle novel. This is Legends #1, Island of Doom. And I remember that I had a subscription to Lego Magazine, which is how you would get all the issues of the Bionicle comic. And my subscription ended just as they were wrapping up this story arc in the comics. And I wanted to know what happened afterward. But apparently, you could find out if you read these junior novels. And so I picked this one up. And if I remember correctly, they kill off all the main characters in this novel. These new villains show up and they just decimate our heroes and utterly destroy them. And I thought, that's awful. Why would they do that? And it ends on a cliffhanger. Buy more books, kids. Tell your parents to buy you more Lego books. All right, folks. Now we move into the section of the video where it's going to be nothing but Christian children's literature from here on out. I make no apologies, but I will give you fair warning. There's going to be a lot of Christian allegory from this point on. So first we have all of my old copies of the Chronicles of Narnia that I had as a kid. The first one was actually, this is a movie tie-in edition of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe with, again, just some crappy screen grabs for the cover. And it does say movie images inside the bottom, but I do not see any movie images inside, so apparently they were lost at some point. Lost to time. They do have all of the original Pauline Baines illustrations, though, which is really all you need with the Narnia books. The next one I have is this super old beat-up copy of Voyage of the Dawn Treader, my favorite of the Narnia books. And I remember that even though I love these books, I hated these covers. I thought they were so silly looking. But I kind of remember this one with some fondness because that goofy-looking sea serpent at the bottom there with his googly eyes. Oh, man. The sea serpent scene in this book is one of the best parts of the book, and they made him look so goofy, so tragic. I have this this edition of The Horse and His Boy. This is a more recent edition, I think. They were making in the 2010s, I think. So yeah, I don't remember if this was the version that I read as a kid, but it was in there with all the other books. These editions of the Narnia books don't have great covers, but out of all of them, I thought this one was the best. I'll throw up a couple of the images of the other covers on the screen. They're not all that great, but I liked this one with the sort of metallic gold embossing. Got Aslan's face at the bottom there, looking cool. So yeah, fun stuff. Yeah, I had a lot of these, I believe these are Collier. Yeah, Collier Books editions of the Narnia books. And like I said, I never liked the covers. So there's Silver Chair with a kind of boring looking cover there. It's whatever. This one's goofy too. This is the edition of The Magician's Nephew that I had. To be fair, that is a scene from the book. That actually happens, but oh man, that's so silly. Silly stuff. Okay, this one has kind of a sad story behind it. This is The Quest by Roy J. Kroom. Now, if you're asking who's Roy J. Kroom, you could be forgiven for not knowing. He was I believe he was a student minister and educator who is from my hometown of Baltimore. And I never knew the man, but he was a sort of, I don't even think he was that close of a friend, but he was an acquaintance of my parents. And unfortunately, he passed away back in 2003. And his family got together a bunch of stories that he'd written about this soldier character. It was this sort of Christian allegory in the vein of the Chronicles of Narnia. And they put together all the stories he'd written about this character. Ooh, it's also a crinkly book. Put them together with these illustrations, these hand-drawn illustrations of his, and published it through this small press, Brentwood Christian Press. And there's Mr. Kroom on the back there. So yeah, I never knew him. I met his sons a couple times. One of his, I believe his youngest son, I talked to him a couple times. We weren't friends, but I think I hung out with him at some like church gatherings or stuff like that. But yeah, sad stuff. But yeah, his I guess his legacy lives on in the form of this independently published book. And I will say, I there is a real charm to his black and white illustrations. They remind me of some old D&D artwork. Oh, especially this one. That's awesome. Look at that. So yeah, it was sort of a, if I remember correctly, it was sort of a Pilgrim's Progress Christian allegory kind of thing. But yeah, it was a fitting legacy for someone who obviously cared about his community, cared about his ministry. So yeah, I don't know if copies of this book are still available, but if you're interested in some Christian juvenile fiction, definitely search this one out. Okay, and lastly, we have a bunch of books by the same author. I'm going to speed through them because I actually plan on doing a video all about this author and his work in 2025 because he was actually very influential on me. This author goes by the name of Wayne Thomas Batson, and again, he is another another writer from my hometown of Baltimore, and he was also an educator, and I believe he was an English teacher, a middle school English teacher for something like 30 years. And he also wrote a series of Christian allegory fantasy novels. This is his main series, or his first series, rather, The Door Within. It was a trilogy. So we have book 1, The Door Within. Book 2, The Rise of the Wormlord. And book 3, The Final Storm. And as you can see, they are also, incredibly dusty. There's dust falling off of these things. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's everywhere. Oh, that was a bad idea. Oh my gosh, I'm actually, okay. Hold on. Okay, sorry, I had to get a drink of water there. Oh my gosh, that was a bad idea. Why are these books so dusty? Oh my gosh, they're not any older than some of those other ones. But in any case, yeah, this trilogy, The Door Within trilogy by Wayne Thomas Batson, I read a lot as a kid. I read these books front to back several times, and they were a really big influence on me. And I won't talk too much about them because, like I said, I'm going to make a full video about Mr. Batson and his writing career. He also wrote a series of pirate adventure novels called the Isle series. We have the first one, Isle of Swords, in paperback, and then the second one, Isle of Fire, in hardcover. My parents bought this hardcover edition for me for my birthday, and it was the first book that I ever had that was signed by the author. Now, obviously, he didn't sign it for me. It was just a signed copy that they bought somewhere. But I thought it was awesome that I had a signed book by one of my favorite authors in my collection. Don't play with fire. That's cool. So yeah, like I said, I will go into detail about Mr. Batson and his books at some point in the future. But just know that for now, he was very influential on me and my reading tastes and eventually how I developed as a writer myself. So look forward to that video. But that's all for now, guys. Thank you for joining me in this trip down memory lane, looking at all these just dusty, musty old books from my old bookshelf. Have you read any of these books? What do you think about them? And until next time, as always, farewell and keep reading. And Merry Christmas. Have a Merry Christmas, guys. And a Happy New Year. All that sentimental junk. Okay, get out of here.